Hello class, this is Dr. Urbi.Ghosh, and today we'll be talking about proteins and how they're critical components of all body tissue. So what are we going to learn about proteins in these next segment of lectures? Well, what are proteins? What are they made out of? Why do we need proteins? How do our bodies break down proteins? And how much protein should we eat? Keep each of these questions in mind as we go through this lecture. The first part of this lecture deals with what are proteins. Well, proteins are basically large complex molecules composed of amino acids. They're made out of the elements carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. They contain a special form of nitrogen that we need for our bodies to build tissue and healthy muscle. There are 20 different types of amino acids that make up these proteins. The structure of amino acid is basically made out of 4 components. You have a central carbon atom that is attached to a hydrogen atom. Then on the left side you have what is called an amine group, which is made out of the nitrogen with the 2 hydrogen atoms attached. On the side you have this acidic group, which is also a carbon attached to a double bonded O and an OH. And on the side chain, which varies and makes each of the amino acid structures different. For example, here in glycine, you only have an H for the side chain group, whereas all the other parts of the amino acid remain intact. Similarly, in the amino acid leucine, you have a long carbon chain that makes up the side chain. In aspartic acid, you have a carbon chain with a carboxyl group in it. Amino acids come in 2 different forms. You have basically the essential amino acids, and these are amino acids which cannot be produced by our bodies but must be obtained from food. 9 of the 20 amino acids that we know about are essential. Then you have the non-essential amino acids, and these can be made by our bodies and is not required from dietary sources. In this table from your book, you can see there's 2 types of groups of amino acids. There's the essential amino acids, and these are basically the amino acids that must be consumed by our diet, and the non-essential amino acids, which are the amino acids that can be manufactured by the body, such as alanine, arginine, asparagine, aspartic acid, cysteine, glutamic acid, glutamine, glycine, proline, serine, and tyrosine. How are proteins made? Proteins are long chains of amino acids. And these amino acids that we talked about, which are the basic building blocks, are joined to each other by what are called peptide bonds. The structure of each protein is dictated by DNA of a gene, your genetics, and that's what everybody has. Similar types of proteins, but they can vary differently from person to person. And I encourage you to go online and take a look at the animation of the protein building blocks. So how are proteins made? Well, there's a 2-step process. The first, transcription and translation. Transcription, which is the first stage of how proteins are made, is when the cell uses the genetic information from the DNA to make RNA. And these messenger, M meaning messenger RNA copies of the genetic information is carried to a organelle called the ribosome, which is sort of like the station where everybody meets to assemble the protein, where then the stage of translation occurs, which is the conversion of genetic information in RNA to assemble the amino acids into a proper sequence to synthesize the protein or ribosome. We must understand that genes regulate amino acids, and that each of us is unique because we inherit a specific genetic code from our parents that's unique to us. And so proteins come from segments of DNA that is deep within our nucleus. And segments of DNA are converted into a template called a messenger RNA. So we use our DNA to assemble and express particular types of proteins. The DNA never leaves the nucleus of the cell, but rather a messenger RNA, a messenger ribonucleic acid, takes a copy of the genetic information from the nucleus to the cytoplasm. And it is in this cytoplasm that translation occurs from the RNA to the protein assembly. In this slide, you can see, which is from figure 4, this is gene expression. So you have the cell and you have this purple nucleus here. And within the purple nucleus, you have the molecule DNA. DNA is unwound because it's a double helix. It's unwound and opened up so that messenger RNA can be formed. And this process of DNA being converted into a segment into a messenger RNA, it opening up and being changed into a messenger, is called the process of transcription. So basically what you have is a part of the DNA unwinds and transcribed into the messenger RNA inside the nucleus. Once this transcription is completed, the messenger RNA then leaves the nucleus and goes to the cytoplasm. Once the messenger RNA reaches the cytoplasm, it binds to these molecules called ribosomes, and the code on the messenger RNA is translated into instructions for a specific order of amino acids. These amino acids then can be assembled into various units and become a complete protein. Now, just a quick word about DNA. Although the DNA for making every protein in our bodies is contained within each nucleus of our cells, not all the genes are expressed, and each cell does not make every type of protein. For example, each cell contains the DNA to manufacture the hormone insulin,